Place than it is today. You don't have to ask your true identity to get paid for your strengths. You don't need to apologize for the supposedly impractical classes you took in college or the so-called soft skills you have acquired. The job market is quietly creating thousands of openings a week for people who can bring a humanistic grace to our rapidly evolving high-tech future. George Anders. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trevor Farmer. And last year when I was up here, I was a wildlife biology major, hungry with curiosity of how our biological world worked. Today, I'm an English literature major. See, many people laugh and they think it's a step down, but I think it's a step in a positive direction. You see, now I have an inspiration to instill creative ideas and critical thinking in those around me and for future generations to come. Now, a big question that we college students are asked is, so what's your major? We all hear it all the time. It's understandable. After all, it's only the rest of our lives. Well, before when I was a wildlife biologist major, and someone would ask me the same question, I'd say, oh, I want to be a wildlife biologist. My major is fishery, wildlife, and aquaculture sciences. They'd get wide-eyed, grin, and put up a fist or a thumbs up saying, great, I bet you're going to do awesome. Well, now, when they ask me the same question, I say, oh, I'm an English literature major. They smile, tight-lipped, and they say, good luck. The sympathy is the same, and it's not their fault. In our society, we have a dichotomy. It's either humanities or it's STEM. And we have a stigma with humanities as the numbers decrease, which we'll get into later in the presentation. Today, I challenge that dichotomy. Why is it that we have to be one or the other? After all, I've changed from one to the other large stigma, very large stigma. But we move forward in a way that I think we can really change the way that our society thinks about the two. After all, what do you call an engineer who knows how to write well? I call them the top 2%. Engineers who know how to write make the future. Scientists who know how to write proposals make the future. And humanity majors who know how our world works knows how we can go forward with our lives. Now, before we can get to either side of the spectrum, I want to pay attention to the Renaissance person, the person who's well-rounded, thinks of all things in life critically, comprehensively, and intuitively. But before we can even get to that, we first need to know how both sides of the same coin works. Let's start about humanities. Well, a general definition of humanities is the study of human cultures. Think of them as archaeologists of ideas. After all, writing, religion, art are some of the greatest windows we have to ancient societies. And chewing on these complicated ideas and perceptions allow us to strengthen our critical thinking outside the box. And just like stretching, the more you stretch your mind, the easier it is to apply yourself to greater ideas. I like to call it brain yoga personally. Now, it also helps us with the discovery of what ethics and morality mean. We're an honor society. We are the leaders of our nation. And you cannot be an effective leader if you do not know your ethics and your values. Or else when you get out in the big wide world, they're going to shake you up and down. You need to know what you stand on, and the discussion of humanities helps you establish that in yourself so you can go forward in the world. And both of these accumulate in the fact that we can talk about intentional and uncomfortable conversations, abortion, immigration, legalization of marijuana, and many more subjects are really hard for people to talk about. But through humanities, we can discuss it. Civil rights, equal rights. It's humanities that discuss this in the courtroom. It is humanities that sets us on an equal playing field to move forward in our world. One of my favorite examples to branch into STEM was the genetic experiment of Lulu and Nana in China. Those of you who don't know, this was an experiment conducted by a Chinese professor at a Chinese university where he took a male who was positive with HIV virus and a non-infected female. And using the CRISPR gene editing tool, he was able to edit the embryo's cells to be stronger and harder to penetrate so the HIV virus couldn't attack. Now, the scientist in me says, oh my, wow, that's amazing. That's absolutely incredible that we could prevent genetic and birth defects before they ever even appear. But the humanist in me realizes that could very quickly become an issue, especially if some of you remember the talk of designer babies, where you can edit hair color, height, music capabilities, and physical capabilities. It doesn't take a lot of thought to realize that can get really bad really quick in the power of nations. Now, moving on to this, what is STEM? Now, STEM, besides being science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM is something I like to envision like a bulldozer in a field. It is STEM that pushes nations forward. It is STEM that makes innovations, technology, that shape the world around us. The projector, this microphone, our phones, the cameras, everything is through technology. And it's through this development that we're able to live in the world that we live in and have the comfortability to think about things instead of having to worry about our food every day. It is technology that pushes us forward in our world. But I see as humanities as the buffer or the guardrail that keeps STEM from going into too many gray areas, which it always does. After all, you can't have innovation without risk. Some poor person had to stand outside in a thunderstorm with a key and a kite to figure out if lightning was electricity or not. You have to take risks to make innovations, and it's humanities that guides it along its way. Now, one of the biggest things we hear about from college students is, I'm an engineering major, why do I need to take composition? Oh, I'm a writing major, why do I need to take biology? Well, it's being the well-rounded individual that can lead us to having a better mindset. After all, in STEM, we learn how to think logically. We can look at a large amount of data and information and boil it down to the important parts that we need. We can think of long, different plans to execute through our daily lives, especially in our ways of leadership. We have a greater understanding of the world's function. Knowing how your world works instills appreciation to those around us. I know whenever I studied range and I was able to learn the different grasses in our wildlife, you can really start to feel an appreciation for what's around you. Knowing how the world works adds another level of depth to it. And that's really fun to think about at a humanities perspective. It also creates the tools for new innovations to push the world forward. Now, these are a couple of graphs I found through the National Center of Educational Statistics. And this is a trend from 2005 to 2016 of STEM to humanities majors. In teal, you see STEM and its global rise, or United States rise. And in Navy, you see humanities. During the Great Recession, we were pretty even, neck and neck. But after the Great Recession went on and funding went higher and higher towards STEM, STEM majors exploded across the nation. This is a comparison of the top 10 states in STEM growth. In New Hampshire, you have an 88% growth in rate from 2010 to 2016. And with that, a 54% humanities growth. Great. But I want to take the attention to Washington, for example, 7th on the list, or 8th, 6th on the list. We have 55% growth in STEM, wonderful, but we have a 17% decrease in humanities bachelor graduates. And this is the trend throughout longer and longer down the list. The further down you go, the more humanities is dropping throughout the United States as time goes on. And that's why I think it's more important than ever to understand the importance of humanities and what it teaches us, and how the two together are really an interlocking relationship, like yin and yang. They give and take, and they feed into one another like fuel. Now, one of the biggest questions that you'll be asked in humanities, and by the wonderful Mr. Dr. Buckle, is so what? It is the so what that gives purpose to what we do. It's why we do the things that we do. It's why we push forward in the world. What's the purpose? And one of the biggest purposes that I find in challenging this mindset towards humanities and STEM is that we can strive to be someone better than we are. My example is the Renaissance person. Now, what do you think when you think Renaissance? Music, art, architecture? I personally think of Leonardo da Vinci. Another quite famous, you may have heard of him once or twice. Now, with da Vinci, he was a perfect example of the Renaissance person. He was a mathematician, an astrologist, a physician, a botanist. He was also an artist, a sculptor, and a writer. It is Leonardo da Vinci and other Renaissance person types that are well-rounded in all things that they do. They're hungry for knowledge. They want to learn more. And it's through this hunger, this knowledge, this thirst to know what the world is like that drives the biggest advancements in technology and our viewpoints in the world. After all science back in ancient Greek was born from philosophy. It came from mind, it came from thought, when these large revolutionary pushes came through. The Renaissance person listens first to understand rather than to be understood. Words by Stephen Covey. Now, it's very important to think first to understand what's coming towards you rather than to sit in conversation and then to speak up after. If you're in a conversation thinking of speaking first, instead of listening to what's being told to you, you're not receiving all the information necessary. You need to first understand what's being told before you should ever think about what to say back. And with that, the Renaissance person can take conversation, digest it, chew on it, and respond with something comprehensive and insightful, something enriching to a discussion and to a conversation. we all have some person in our discussion that throws in something that was half-baked and kind of doesn't really add anything to the topic. And those can always be frustrating. And I think it's because we don't have this appreciation for both sides of our spectrum that these instances happen more and more. People don't think about the actual level behind it, the science behind it, the laws behind it. Whenever we talk about things in class, I found there's a lot of misconceptions with a lot of different things. And I think because of that, we don't have a hunger to learn more. And I think it's this lack of hunger that really pushes us down and keeps a lot of things like equal rights from rising up as quickly as they should be. The Renaissance person never stops learning. After all, the Renaissance person is the master, jack of all trades, and master whatever they set their mind to. A master of none isn't something applicable to the Renaissance person because they don't know when to quit. They always know to push forward and to keep striving to learn more and to learn more about the world around them. And I ask you today, what do you think about humanities and STEM? What is your viewpoint of the two? Are you a humanities major? Do you hate your biology class? Are you a STEM major and you really despise history? I think it's really be beneficial to everyone in our society, our teachers, our students, the people coming up behind us, if we took a moment to appreciate all the things that are being thrown at us. If you look at our core curriculum, there's a reason we have to take every part of life. It rounds us off and makes us better and more insightful individuals. All in all, I challenge you. I challenge you to think more about the world around us. I challenge you to think more about the world that we live in. Take the dichotomy that we've been given of STEM versus humanities, two tectonics of knowledge in world building, and bridge them together yourself. I believe we started off as Pangea. Humanities and STEM were built together. The further we move on, the further we drift apart. And I say that we need to be the future that bridges the two together. Thank you. If you have any questions,